Hey, did you hear that one about the fox and the grapes? A fox one day spied a beautiful bunch of grapes just dangling from the vine hanging off of a tree up high. The grapes seemed very, very full and thick and ready to burst with juice, and the fox's mouth watered just at the gaze of them. The bunch was hung from a very, very high branch, and the fox had to jump for it. He jumped so high, but he missed. It just wasn't high enough. So he walked off a short distance and got a running start, booked for it, jumped even higher, and missed. So a third time, backed up even further, ran up, jumped off of a rock, and missed again. Again and again and again, the fox tried over and over to reach the grapes, and only to come to increasingly higher levels of disappointment. Eventually he sat down and just started looking at the grapes with disgust in his heart and just a sneer. "What a fool I am," the fox said to himself. "Here I am just wearing myself out to get a bunch of sour grapes. Sour grapes that are just not worth gaping for." And off he walked, very, very scornfully. The end. So that's a story by Aesop of Aesop's Fables, known as The Fox and the Grapes. It's argued that it's one of Aesop's most popular fables of all time. So I paraphrase the story a little bit just to make it a little more interesting and tell it my own way. But the moral is still the same as far as what Aesop was apparently trying to communicate. What do you think the moral of the story was? Well, according to the source that I found this particular story, the moral that they say it is, there are many who pretend to despise and belittle that which is slightly beyond their reach. That's something to consider and think about. I've seen other people do it, and I've even done it myself. If I can't achieve something I've been working hard at doing, I might get a little spiteful towards the thing I'm trying to achieve. It's kind of interesting. Well, I thought that moral was a pretty interesting one and noteworthy too. Did you get any other morals out of this story? I think that a good story or a good fable or a good poem or a good anecdote usually has a couple of different ways you can interpret it. And if it doesn't have a couple different ways to interpret it, you can always find something if you're looking for it, right? I mean, the fox didn't even have the opportunity to taste the grapes at all, but convinced himself that they were sour, so they weren't worth grabbing. I mean, did he really convince himself that, or was he just angry and just said it out of spite to the grapes? Why is this fox even talking, right? I mean, foxes don't talk. That's a good question. Is there a moral associated with that? I jest. But these are all good questions to ask, I think. I've always been interested in fables, anecdotes, allegories, stories, and other ways of communicating lessons, morals, ideas, in a very palatable form for a mass audience. Aesop's fables come from an oral tradition of storytelling passed down from generation to generation before it was eventually written down. And some argue whether or not Aesop actually existed, but whether or not Aesop was an actual human being doesn't really matter anymore, because we're talking thousands and thousands of years later. The ideas are what lived on from Aesop's existence, whether or not Aesop actually was existent. And Aesop stood for something. Aesop stood for fables. Aesop stood for these stories involving animals that played certain roles and fit certain stereotypes of behavior, and the animals also fulfilled certain sort of personality traits that we can see in other people. For instance, the lion is noble, strong, bold, runs the jungle, and the mouse is very small, meek, but can fit in small places that the lion can't, or can chew off ropes to set the lion free if that ever actually happens. And I think because we have talking animals, and these are very simple stories with a very direct moral or lesson, it's easy to pass off Aesop's fables as stories for children, but I think that they have a lot more to offer than just stories for children. And I also think they have a lot more to offer than just the moral that they give you. I think there are a number of other morals that can be pulled or extrapolated from these stories, depending on the perspective and depending on where you're at and how you choose to read into it. So did you get any other morals or lessons out of The Fox and the Grapes here today? I'd be very curious to know what you have to say about Aesop's fables, about this particular story or this particular fable, and whether or not you got any other morals or messages or lessons out of this fable. And if you did, please leave a comment down below. I'd like to have a polite discourse with anyone who's willing to talk about Aesop's fables or what else they get out of any of these stories. And I'm gonna call it for the night. Thanks very much for watching this, folks. I appreciate it very much. Please know, if you're new to my channel, I post every single day here on YouTube, and I've organized all my content into different playlists, so check out my playlist section. You might find something else in there that piques your interest. And I'll wrap up this video the way I've been wrapping up most of my videos lately, with these words, as cheesy as they may be. Remember to never give up. Do your best. Stay true to you and who you are, and be amazing. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a beautiful night, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.